Are there any statements? I give the call to the Chief Government Whip in continuation.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, Speaker, I rise today to speak on this legislation with a heavy heart. A heavy heart because I represent a corner of the world where distressing things have occurred in recent time. I represent some of the families that have been directly impacted by the events in Victoria that we've all followed so closely. And I think it's incumbent upon me today to reach out to those families impacted and offer my support once again, as I have done from home, but also my thanks to the way they have responded to an incredibly challenging situation in their personal lives, in their family lives, made more acutely distressing because it's about our children. And I rise to support this bill and the early action of this government to ensure that our early education and care sector is ensuring that centres are not putting profit before the safety of our children, and finding ways, working with the Minister for Education, Jason Clare, and with those appropriate people across our states to find ways to ensure that we are making this sector as safe as possible so that families can feel assured that safety is the cornerstone of our early education and childcare sector. That we've sharpened our focus to ensure that, working with states and territories and ECEC regulatory agencies, that our priorities around safety, around quality, around access and around affordability, that those four pillars are being met. Now, as a member of a government who has done a lot of work in the last parliament around the affordability space in supporting families to be able to access quality early childhood and education, and a lot of work around valuing our early childhood educators, something that was long overdue, and ensuring that they are getting a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. Because we know that the vast majority of our workers in this space are great Australians doing incredibly important work in the earliest days of a child's life, incredibly important work. So making sure that around the country all governments have a sharp focus to ensure that we get the pieces right now to make sure that the safety and the quality, things I don't think can be separated, are working together. I want to thank our local community. I want to thank Victoria Police for the way they've managed what has been occurring, and I want to thank the Victorian Health Department for the way they've worked with local families. I've sat with some of the local families impacted. It has given me an insight into the catastrophic impact that this has had. And I come here to talk about this piece of legislation with their goodwill, because they now understand that action will be taken to ensure that profit is never put before safety. That where those centres fail to meet standards and provide a safe environment, that we think those centres shouldn't operate, and that we know, as the Minister for Education has said on several occasions this week at the dispatch box, we know that as the funder in this space, we can make a direct impact by cutting off funding, by creating more power to allow for spot checks around fraud, around non-compliance and around safety. That as a federal government we can act to create deterrence around non-compliance and incentive around quality. And this is the beginning of the work, and it will continue. Deputy Speaker, the legislation before us, the provisions of the Early Childhood Education and Care Strengthening Regulation of Early Education Bill, is a critical piece of the architecture, if you like, but the work going forward around meeting with our state and territory bodies, working together with the Commonwealth to find better ways to ensure that safety is what this bill sets up and allows. This bill will ensure quality and safety is a paramount consideration for maintaining CCS provider and service approval. So in other words, if you're coming into this sector without an eye on safety and quality, don't bother. Don't bother. The funding will not be there to support you. The approvals will not come. The bill means providers or services who do not meet this consideration can be subject to compliance action, including having their funding cut. It will ensure quality and safety is paramount consideration when assessing CCS provider approval applications, meaning providers or services who not meet this consideration can be prevented from expanding. So in other words, if you're a bad actor in this space in terms of ensuring that safety and that quality, then you can be stopped from opening another centre, from expanding your involvement. And it expands the Secretary's power to publicise actions taken against providers, because sunlight is, of course, the best medicine in terms of exposure. And it's going to strengthen powers of entry of authorised persons to enable them to conduct unannounced service visits and spot checks, including family daycare and out-of-school hours care. These are really important provisions. The bill also supports the implementation of the CCS reform, further measures for strong and sustainable foundations measure announced in the 24-25 budget, which includes streamlining the process for seeking entry to an early education and care service under a monitoring warrant, and for an appointment appropriately qualified and experienced expert to conduct an independent audit of a large childcare provider. And it requires from the 1st of January 2026 that all family daycare and in-home care providers collect the CCS gap fee, the out-of-pocket component of fees paid by parents directly from families. I want to thank the Minister for Education and the new Minister for Early Education and Care, the Senator Walsh from Victoria, for their work, for their availability when this news broke in Victoria to talk with me, to allow me the scope to meet with families and have important conversations with them, to ensure that they felt supported in this process by their federal government, and thank the Victorian counterparts for the work that they've done in this space as well. Deputy Speaker, keeping our children safe is of paramount importance to this government, but what is critically important in that space is that marriage between safety and quality. We know it matters. Now, I'm in childcare centres, early education centres. A lot in my electorate, representing one of the youngest communities in the country, means that there are many centres operating in my community, and visiting them gives me a sense that I am actually on the ground as a pair of eyes as well in those centres, and I welcome any families that want to talk to me about the things that they might be very happy with or very unhappy with in the centres in my electorate, because there is nothing more important than this. And I know, Deputy Speaker, how important you know that first 1,000 days in a child's life is, how important we know how important early education is. We know how important the foundations for learning are, and we know that they are best. The statistics tell us that those children who are engaged in early education are better prepared for school, meet their milestones more quickly. We know that these things are real, so we know that there is quality in having these centres. It's up to government to ensure the quality inside the centres is up to scratch. And I want to thank all of those people who make a commitment every day to be an early educator for their work. I know many who live in my community who are early educators, and I want to thank them for their work. I want to thank the families for the way they have dealt with this crisis in Victoria, and I want to thank the ministers for taking action so quickly.
I thank the member for